So, anybody else hate the apartment hunting process in New York because it is just so stressful and competitive? I'm one of those people, and you probably are too if you're watching this video, but luckily for you, I'm here to give you some tips and tricks on how to find your dream apartment in New York, because we all want that, don't we? And then I'm also going to put in the footage of the apartments that I toured this time around while I was apartment hunting. I was originally going to make it a separate video, but I realized that I didn't take footage in most of the apartments that I toured. And I'll get into why a little bit later on for that section of the video, but I don't think that it would have sufficed as its own video because it would have been really, really short. So if you're only interested in seeing the apartments that I toured and don't really care about the tips I'm going to share with you, then you can skip to the timestamp that I will put on the screen right here. So the first thing to know is when to start apartment hunting, because the real estate market here goes by really, really fast. So I would suggest that you start browsing streeteasy about 6 weeks in advance of when you plan to move. But I don't think you should actually start touring places until about a month from when you plan to move. And even a month is a lot. So a lot of people say that you shouldn't start intensely apartment hunting until about 2-ish weeks before you want to move. For me, that makes me very stressful because my lease is ending September 30th. So if I want an October 1st move in, that means that I shouldn't start intensely apartment hunting until September 15th. But then that makes things a lot more stressful because in my mind, I'm thinking I only have 2 more weeks to find a place. And what if I don't find a place and then I'm homeless? So personally, I like to have like a 2-week to 1 month overlap. Yes, you're paying double rent, but I feel like that's better than not having a place to live and being homeless. The next thing you should do is to set a budget. So typically in New York, you need to make 40 times your monthly rent. So that means that if you are renting a place for $2,000, you need to make at least $80,000 a year to rent that place without a guarantor. If you don't make 40 times your monthly rent, you will need to get a guarantor. Typically, the guarantor needs to make 80 times the monthly rent, and a guarantor is just someone who signs the lease with you saying that if you default on payment and you're not able to pay the rent every month, the guarantor will be responsible to pay. So you can either have your parents guarantor for you or just a close relative, or you can also use a guarantor company. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I know that they do charge a fee for that and it can get pretty expensive. So generally I recommend people stay with the 40 times your monthly rent rule so you don't have to use a guarantor, or if you really need to use a guarantor, then maybe just use your parents because you won't have to pay for that. The next thing you should decide is which area of the city you want to live. Do you want to live near Times Square with all the people and tourists and everything, or do you want something a little bit more quiet and remote in the other boroughs of New York? Obviously, the biggest factor you should consider is your commute to work. If you're going to be commuting to work, you definitely don't want to live somewhere where you are commuting an hour each way to work, even if you got an apartment for a really good deal. You also want to look around the surrounding areas of your apartment. Is there a grocery store, shopping center nearby? Is the subway nearby? Are there multiple subways nearby? Because if you're only close to one subway line and that subway line is down, you're pretty much screwed because you're either going to have to Uber or I don't know what other option there is. The next thing you should know is that you should check streeteasy religiously. And when I say religiously, I say you need to be refreshing the streeteasy page with your budget and what areas you want to live probably every single hour, because the rental market in New York goes by so fast. Like literally, if there's an apartment that's a good deal in a good location, it could go up and then 24 hours and it could be gone. So you need to be on top of it. You need to make sure that you are one of the first people to message the broker when an apartment is listed. And not only should you message through the streeteasy website, but you should also text them, call them, do everything you can to get in contact with them. And I know with the broker at the place that I'm going to be moving to, he told me that he only responded to the first 5 people that messaged him, because he said he got like over 200 messages within the first day. And the first 5 people that messaged him, those are the people that he showed the apartment to. And the rest of the people he just ignored, because if he couldn't rent it out to those first 5 people, he would just choose the next 5 people. So you definitely want to be one of the first people to message the broker, stay on top of it, check streeteasy every single single hour, every single day, because it is going to go by so fast. And if you're not on top of it, the places are just going to be gone. Also, just know that if you're apartment hunting in the summer, it's going to be a lot more competitive because most people are going to be moving during the summer. May to September will probably be the most competitive time for the rental market because people are graduating from college, they're finding a place to live, to start their full-time jobs when they graduate. And then also people who are coming here for school, they need to find housing because usually school starts end of August, beginning of September. And the weather is just nice out, so people want to move. And then the winter months, I've heard, is a lot less competitive, meaning places stay on the market for a lot longer and there's a lot less competition. However, I have heard that there are less availability in the winter time because not as many people are moving. And then in the summer, although there's more competition, there are more places available. The next thing, after you decided your budget, after you picked an apartment on StreetEasy that you want to view, after the broker has gotten back to you, now it is time for you to finally tour apartments. And this is probably one of the most exciting / stressful parts of the whole apartment hunting process. But when you're touring apartments, I really recommend that you take a video of the unit that you're going to be living in. And I also recommend that you see the exact unit that you're going to be living in, because the pictures on StreetEasy, they can look very nice, and when you see it in person, it might not look that way because they could have used photos for another unit, or they could have photoshopped the units to make it look a lot nicer than it actually is in person. And then taking a video, I recommend you do this because a lot of times when you're apartment hunting, you don't really think about a lot of things. And then afterwards you think, oh, wait, did this apartment have this? Does this apartment have this? And if you have a video, you can definitely go back and look at that. And also when you're apartment hunting, you want to ask questions. Ask about how packages are delivered. Ask if there's laundry in the building. Ask if heat and hot water is included in your rent, because most of the times heat and hot water is included in your rent, but there are some units that apparently don't include that. It's pretty rare, but you definitely want to make sure that you're renting a place that you know all the ins and outs of. Also, look to make sure that there's closets in the unit. I know it sounds silly, but I actually toured, I think, 2 units that didn't have any closets, and so that meant that I would need to get a clothing rack to hang my clothes. Also, I like to check the water, so I like to turn on the water, make sure there's hot water, cold water. And then another thing I like to look at is the curtains, because a lot of apartment buildings, they don't come with curtains, so that means you're gonna have to install your own curtains when you move in. There are some that come with curtains, but for example, the place that I have right now doesn't come with curtains, so I had to get my own curtains when I moved here. The place that I'll be moving to does have its own curtain, so I won't have to deal with that. Ask about how trash works, if you're gonna have to walk very far to get to the trash, or if it's just in the building, in the basement, or if it's outside. Ask about the security, if there's security cameras, or if there's a doorman, you don't have to worry about that. Look at the surrounding areas of the apartment, make sure that the area is in a good place. You don't wanna live somewhere that's really sketchy. And also, if you can, I know that this isn't possible for every single apartment, but if the tenant is currently in the unit while you're touring it, definitely ask the current tenant if there's any red flags about the apartment. I did this with the first apartment that I toured, and it was really useful. If the tenant is in there, you can definitely ask some of the other people who are living in the building. And that's another thing. Make sure that the people that are living in the building are proper people. So after you picked a place that you wanted to live, then the next step is to fill out an application and send in the required documents to apply for the unit. So the application is very easy. It's just gonna ask you your name, your birthday, some general information, and the required documents will vary landlord to landlord, but generally you will need an ID, you will need your 2 to 3 most recent pay stubs, your most recent tax return, letter of employment. Sometimes it will ask you for your 1 to 2 most recent rent payments at your current apartment, and sometimes they'll also ask you for a landlord recommendation or reference letter. I personally never needed the landlord recommendation reference letter, but I do know that some buildings, they want that, so definitely have that prepared if you need it. And then you'll also need a $20 application fee for them to do a background check on you. That's just to check your credit score. And something I want to say about the application is that it, for the most part, is not a first come first serve basis. I saw a lot of videos on YouTube of people giving tips about apartment hunting. You need all of your required documents saved on your laptop, and you need the application filled out, and then you need to send it immediately to the broker, because usually the first person who applies will get the apartment. I did not find that to be true. For all the apartments that I applied to with multiple applicants, the landlord will look through all the applications and then pick one person who they would want to rent the apartment to. So in my own personal opinion, I don't think you need to be the first person to apply, but obviously if it's taking you a couple days to send in your stuff, they're probably not gonna go with you. But just know that if you have a good credit score, you have a good income, you have a decent job, you have all your required documents, then you should be a pretty strong candidate for that apartment. Another thing I want to say about the application, and this wasn't the case for the place I'm living in right now, but the place that I'm living in right now, I applied to this place on an online portal, and then I uploaded my required documents on the portal, and then I paid my $20 fee on the portal. However, this time around when I was applying to apartments, all of them wanted the application to be filled out and the required documents to be sent through email. And email is not a secure way to send all this personal information. So I really recommend that you encrypt the documents that you're going to be sending. Or if you can't encrypt, definitely send the email in confidential mode. And that's going to be a lot more secure. Because the last thing you want is for your identity to be stolen, because email is just not a secure means of sending that stuff. Another thing I want to mention is that some places will require you to put down a good faith deposit, and this usually ranges from $200 to $500. And this is just while your application is pending, they take the apartment off the market, and so you're the only applicant. And if you're approved, then that money goes towards your first month's rent. But if you don't get approved, then you get that good faith deposit back. For the most part, from what I've seen, you only get your good faith deposit back if you don't get approved. You will not get that money back if you change your mind about not wanting to move forward with that apartment anymore. So definitely when you put down the deposit, make sure that that is somewhere that you want to live, because you might not get that money back if you change your mind. So next thing, after you are approved for the apartment, you will obviously need to sign the lease, and I think every landlord does this a little bit differently. For the unit I'm living in right now, I had to digitally sign the lease in the online portal, and that was it. And then for the apartment that I'm moving to, I had to go in person and physically sign the lease, and obviously he gave me a copy of it also. But before you sign the lease, you definitely want to look over it, because this is a binding contract that you're getting into. What I always like to ask is, what would happen if I break my lease? Like, would there be a penalty? Most places will have a penalty if you break the lease. Typically, it's about 2 months rent.
However,
at the place that I'm going to be moving to, I asked him what the penalty is if I broke the lease, because I couldn't find it on the lease. He told me that I only needed to give a 30 days notice within the first of the month. So that means if I told him on August 15th that I didn't want to stay anymore, then I would be responsible for rent until the end of September. But if I told him August 31st that I didn't want to stay anymore, I would still only be responsible until the end of September. That was really, really nice, because the place that I'm living at right now, if I break the lease, I have to pay 2 months rent penalty, and that is a lot of money, and
your girl ain't a billionaire.
So definitely read it through. Also know what the rules are for quiet hours, know what you can and can't do with the apartment, know the rules regarding overnight guests. And then after you sign the apartment, you will need to send your security deposit, your first month's rent, and a broker's fee if there is one. Most apartments in New York will have a broker's fee. There are some that don't, and that doesn't mean that the broker isn't being paid. That just means that the landlord is going to pay for the broker's fee instead of you, which I find is ridiculous. I think that the tenant should not be responsible for the broker's fee, because
the broker is helping the landlord rent out the apartment, but then when they rent it out, you're the one that has to pay the fee and not the landlord.
Which I just don't understand. And even if all the broker does is just open the door and show you the apartment, you still have to pay that fee. Typically the fee is either 1 month's rent or 15% of the total annual rent. And usually the security deposit, first month's rent, and broker's fee will be wired or with a cashier's check or with Venmo or on the portal. It just depends on what the landlord and broker prefer. So definitely ask them how you should pay that. And after you send in the payment and you sign the lease and everything's good, you are ready to move in and the apartment is yours. So congrats. Now I'm going to go through the 6 apartments that I toured. Like I said, I don't have video footage for most of these places, but I'm still gonna tell you guys about them. I'm gonna put in the footage that I do have. First apartment that I toured was a studio on the Upper East Side. This apartment was $1,980 with a 15% broker's fee of the annual rent. It was on the 3rd floor. There was an elevator. There was no laundry, but the broker did say that they could give us a key to another unit that was close by and we could use the laundry there. And this was a September 15th move-in, which was perfect. And I went and toured this place and I really liked it, but it was really small and the tenant was living there at the time. So this was the one tenant that I did get an opportunity to ask if there were any red flags. He told me that the maintenance team at one point was not very responsive and they left him without any water for a couple of weeks. And then I don't remember what else he said, but I did take footage of this unit, but for some reason I can't find it. So I hope that's okay. Also, the view was very, very pretty at this unit, but it was north facing, which meant that there wasn't gonna be a lot of sunlight because north facing windows just generally don't get a lot of sunlight. This next apartment that I toured was one of my favorites. This was in Astoria. This was on the 2nd floor of a walk-up. So it was only 1 flight of stairs up, so it wasn't too much. It was small, but it was very, very renovated. Like the kitchen and the bathroom looked like the kitchen and the bathroom of some kind of luxury apartment. I loved it so much, and it was really close to a laundromat because there wasn't laundry in the building, and also really close to like a shopping center, which I also really liked. This apartment was $1,800 a month and no broker's fee, which is just an absolute steal, with an August 1st move-in. So August 1st was kind of early because my lease doesn't end until September 30th. I asked if an August 15th move-in was okay, and the broker said that that was fine. So I ended up putting an application in for this apartment, and the reason why I don't have video footage of this apartment was because I thought I was going to get it, and I thought to myself, well,
I don't need video footage because once I move in, I'm going to do an apartment tour and then everyone will see what this apartment looks like.
But I didn't end up getting the apartment because the landlord ended up choosing someone who was willing to do a August 1st move-in. So I really liked it, but I didn't get it, but that's okay because I ended up getting another place. Next apartment is a studio in Murray Hill. This was $2,200 a month with a 15% broker's fee. So very expensive compared to the last apartment with no broker's fee. And then there was no laundry in the building. There was no elevator. It was on the 2nd floor. And it was also an immediate move-in. And I do have video footage of this apartment, but I didn't really like it because the hallways were so dark. And then when I got to the apartment itself wasn't bad. It didn't have a good view, but I don't know. I just didn't feel like $2,200 plus a 15% broker's fee was worth the price for this apartment, particularly, especially after I saw the second apartment in Astoria that was so nice and renovated with the bathroom and the kitchen. So I didn't put in an application for this place because I just didn't really like it. The next apartment I toured was an apartment in East Harlem. And yes, I know East Harlem is not a particularly great place to live, but I still decided to go see it because this apartment was on the 4th floor of an elevator building with laundry. It was $2,000 a month with no broker's fee, and it was also a September 1st move-in. So I went and toured this place, and it was okay. It wasn't bad, but like I said, East Harlem isn't a particularly great place to live, and me as a young girl, I just didn't feel like I wanted to be in that area after walking through it, and so I did not end up applying for this place either. The next apartment I toured was also in Astoria. It was a studio, but the living area was separate from the bedroom and there was a door, so I think it'd be considered a 1-bedroom apartment, but it was advertised on StreetEasy as a studio, and this was $1,850 a month. It had a 12% broker's fee of the annual rent. And then it was also on the 4th floor of a walk-up building, but there was laundry in the basement. And originally they wanted an August 15th move-in, but then I talked to them and they agreed for a September 1st move-in. And I also don't have footage of this place because I actually did put an application in for this place and I was the only person who applied. So I put down a $200 good faith deposit and I sent in all my documents. I filled out the application. They did the background check on me and they approved me, and then they wanted me to go in and sign the lease. However, I ended up hearing back from the last apartment, which is the apartment that I'm going to be moving to, and that place was much cheaper and it was also much bigger than this apartment. So that is why I didn't end up signing the lease for this apartment, because I got approved for the apartment that I'm going to be moving to that same day. And so I told them that I didn't want this one anymore. Yes, I did lose my $200 good faith deposit, but it is what it is. It's only $200. It's not a big deal. Also, this apartment was in Astoria. It was actually on the same street as that second apartment, the one that had a really renovated kitchen and bathroom. It was on that same street. And this brings me to the last apartment that I toured, which is the apartment that I got. For safety reasons, I'm not going to say where it's located, but it is a studio. It is on the 2nd floor. There's laundry. I don't think there's an elevator, but there was a broker's fee, but it was only a 1-month broker's fee, which I was able to justify. It's a September 1st move-in. This is about 2 or 3 times the size of what I have right now, and I'm so excited to show you guys. I will definitely do a tour of that apartment after I move in and decorate it and everything. But yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. Hopefully it helped you in your apartment hunting process. It is very stressful. I know it is very, very, very stressful. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely subscribe, turn on the notification, give this video a thumbs up, and leave me in the comments down below which area in New York is your favorite place. All right, I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.